I bought a lakefront cottage on Lake Texoma so I could finally watch the sunrise over the water every morning without anyone bothering me. Then my nephew called and said, "I'm turning your place into an Airbnb. You can stay in the back room when there aren't guests. Be grateful I'm including you." I didn't argue with him, but when he showed up with his first paying customers, they found the surprise I'd been preparing for weeks. The name's Howard Barnes, and I'm 62 years old. Now, let me tell you how this whole mess started. The real estate agent's pen made a scratching sound as she signed the final page. I sat in her office in Dallas, watching October rain streak the windows, holding the keys to something I'd dreamed about since my wife Linda passed 4 years ago. The cottage cost me $285,000, 40 years building highways for the Texas Department of Transportation, every overtime shift, every holiday worked, every vacation I'd postponed so Linda and I could save up. All of it converted into 900 square feet of weathered cedar on 3/4 of an acre of waterfront property. "Congratulations, Mr. Barnes," Diana said, sliding the deed across her desk. "You picked a beautiful spot. Lake Texoma is gorgeous year-round. Thank you." I pocketed the keys and shook her hand. My fingers were steadier than I expected. Here's the thing about building roads for 4 decades. You learn to appreciate solid foundations and clear boundaries. That cottage represented both for me. The drive from her office took 45 minutes, winding through East Texas pine forest until the road opened up to water views. When I pulled into the gravel driveway, I cut the engine and just sat there for a minute. The cottage sat 60 feet from the water, surrounded by oak trees with their thick, gnarled branches. A great blue heron stood in the shallows, perfectly still, hunting. No traffic noise, no construction sounds, no voices from neighboring houses bleeding through walls. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The previous owners had left it clean, but empty. One main room with a kitchenette and stone fireplace. A bedroom barely large enough for a queen bed. A bathroom with a shower I'd need to duck slightly to enter. The windows faced the water, and through them I could see boats crossing in the distance, white against the gray water. Perfect. You have to understand, after Linda died, I'd been living in that cramped Dallas apartment, counting down the days until I could afford this place. Every morning I'd wake up to car horns and sirens. This cottage was going to be my sanctuary. I spent that first week moving in slowly, methodically. My furniture from the Dallas apartment fit exactly where I'd imagined it would. The leather recliner positioned where morning light would hit it just right. Books on the built-in shelves organized by subject. Engineering journals I'd never had time to read thoroughly. History books. 3 novels Linda had loved and recommended I read someday. Out back, I set up my workshop in the small shed. Tools hung on the pegboard, everything in its proper place. Fishing rod mounted above the door, creating order from the chaos of starting over. By the following Saturday, I had my routine down. Wake at dawn, make coffee, carry it to the deck, and watch the sun come up over the lake. Man, there's nothing like Texas sunrise over water. The heron visited most mornings, standing there patient as a statue. Bass would jump near the shore, making those little ripples spread out in perfect circles. Once a small group of deer came down to drink, their white tails flicking as they watched me watching them. Now here's where the trouble started. I called my sister Carol that evening to let her know I was all settled in. "Howard, I'm so happy for you," she said, and I could hear the warmth in her voice. "You've earned this. After everything with Linda's illness, all those years of work, you deserve some peace." "It's quiet," I told her. "Exactly what I needed." "Darren has been asking about your place. He's very interested in real estate now, did I tell you?" Something in her tone made me pause. Carol had this way of bringing up topics that weren't as casual as she made them sound. "No, you didn't mention that." "Oh, yes. He's been researching investment properties. He and Jennifer are quite ambitious." She laughed, but it sounded thin. "I think he might want to visit soon, see what you've done with the cottage." "He's welcome any time," I said, though a small warning bell started ringing in my mind. Just have him call first. We talked for another 10 minutes before hanging up. I sat on the deck afterward, watching darkness settle over the water. That warning bell kept ringing quietly, but I told myself I was being paranoid. Darren was my nephew, Carol's only son. Family. But let me tell you something about family. Sometimes they're the ones who'll surprise you the most, and not always in a good way. The call came 2 weeks later. I was splitting firewood behind the cottage when my phone rang. The display showed Darren's name. "Uncle Howard finally got through to you." His voice had that smooth quality he'd developed working real estate sales. Always sounded like he was trying to close a deal. "Mom said you're all settled in the new place." "That's right." I set down the axe and walked to the deck where I could hear him better. "How are you and Jennifer doing?" "We're excellent. Listen, I've been looking at your property on Google Maps. That's prime waterfront you've got there. Do you know what the rental potential is on a place like that?" My hand tightened on the phone. Rental potential? Airbnb. Short-term vacation rentals. Your cottage could easily pull in $3,000, maybe $4,000 a month during peak season. More if we renovate a bit. I've been running the numbers and the ROI is incredible. Now you have to understand something here. I didn't buy this place to make money. I bought it to have some peace and quiet after Linda died. Darren, I bought this place to live in. It's not a rental property. I understand that, but hear me out. You're sitting on a gold mine here. We could partner up, you and me. I'd handle all the management, booking, cleaning, everything. You just collect your share of the profits, and when it's not rented, you can stay here. Back bedroom would work fine for you. I couldn't believe he just said that. The back bedroom of my own cottage. Think of it as an investment property that you also get to use. Best of both worlds. I'm offering to do all the work, Uncle Howard. All you have to do is say yes. I'm saying no, Darren. This is my home, not a business opportunity. His tone changed. Got cooler, like when a salesman realizes you're not buying what he's selling. That's short-sighted. You're retired. You're alone out there. What if something happens? What if you need money for medical expenses? At least think about it. There's nothing to think about. I appreciate the call, but my answer is no. "We'll talk again soon," he said, and hung up before I could respond. I stood there holding the phone, staring at the water. The heron was hunting in the shallows again, patient and still. Man, I wished life could be that simple sometimes. That night, I couldn't sleep well. I kept thinking about Darren's phrase. Back bedroom would work fine for you. As if my own cottage had become his property in his mind and he was graciously allowing me space in it. Who thinks like that? 3 days later, Carol called. Here we go, I thought. Howard, Darren is really upset. He says you rejected his business proposal without even considering it. Carol, he wanted to turn my cottage into an Airbnb and have me stay in the back room when it's not rented. How is that even a proposal? It's my home. He's just trying to help. You know how enthusiastic he gets about opportunities. Jennifer's been encouraging him to build a property portfolio. He can build it with properties he buys himself, not mine. There was a pause on the other end. You've changed since you moved out there. You sound different, harder. I sound like someone protecting what took me 40 years to earn. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and pulled out a notepad. Old habit from my engineering days. Document everything. When you're building highways, you learn that if it's not written down, it didn't happen. I wrote down the date of Darren's call, his exact words as I remembered them. Carol's follow-up call. Not because I expected to need it, just because precision prevents misunderstandings. The next 2 weeks passed quietly. I fell back into my routine. Morning coffee, reading, afternoon walks along the shore, evening fires in the fireplace. Started working on a small birdhouse in my workshop, something Linda would have loved to see in our yard back in Dallas. I was starting to believe Darren had accepted my refusal. I should have known better. On a Tuesday morning in early November, I was replacing a rotted board on the deck when a sedan pulled into my driveway. Darren and Jennifer emerged. They hadn't called ahead, which already told me this wasn't a social visit. "Uncle Howard!" Darren waved like we were old friends meeting by chance. We were in the area. Thought we'd stop by. Jennifer, tall and polished and clothes too expensive for a casual visit, surveyed my property with the kind of eyes a real estate agent uses when they're calculating square footage and market value. "It's smaller than I expected from the listing photos," she said. Now that got my attention real quick. "What listing photos?" "Oh, just the real estate photos from when you bought it. We've been studying the property, like it was some kind of investment they were already planning to acquire." Darren climbed the deck stairs without waiting for an invitation. "Can we come in? We'd like to discuss something important." I considered saying no, but Carol would hear about it and I'd be painted as the difficult one. 5 minutes. I have errands in town. Inside, they sat at my kitchen table like they were conducting a business meeting. Darren pulled out his phone and opened a spreadsheet. This kid had actually created a business plan for my cottage. "I've done comprehensive research since we last spoke. Your cottage, properly marketed, could generate $45,000 annually in gross rental income. After expenses, that's probably $25,000 to $30,000 in profit. Split 50-50 between us, you'd be making $12,000 to $15,000 passive income. I don't want passive income. I want to live in my home. Jennifer leaned forward, her voice gentle but calculated, like she'd practiced this speech. Howard, may I be frank? You're 62 years old, living alone in a fairly isolated location. What's your 10-year plan? What if you need assisted living eventually? Properties like this, they lose value if they're not maintained and utilized properly. I'm maintaining it fine. For now, Darren said. But realistically, how much longer can you manage this place by yourself? We're offering you a solution that benefits everyone. You get steady income. We handle all the work. The property gets professionally managed. Let me tell you something. When someone starts talking about what's best for you when it clearly benefits them more, that's when you know you're being played. My answer hasn't changed. This is not for rent. Darren's expression hardened. The friendly nephew mask slipped a bit. You're being selfish, Uncle Howard. Mom said you'd be difficult about this. Carol said that? She's worried about you. We all are. You've isolated yourself out here. You're not thinking clearly about your future, and you're refusing help from family who care about you. Jennifer stood up. We should go, Darren. He's not ready to see reason yet. At the door, Darren turned back. Think carefully about this, Uncle Howard. You might not get another offer this good, and if you change your mind later, the terms might be less favorable. That sounded like a threat to me. They left, and I watched their car disappear down the driveway. Then I immediately called Carol. Did you tell Darren I'd be difficult about his rental scheme? Howard, I just said you were very attached to the cottage. He's worried about you being alone out there. We both are. I'm not alone. I'm solitary. There's a difference. Is there? Linda's been gone 4 years. You've cut yourself off from everyone, moved to the middle of nowhere, and now you're fighting with family who's trying to help. The words stung because they contained a grain of truth. I had withdrawn after Linda died. The engineering firm had felt meaningless without her to come home to, but withdrawal wasn't the same as being unable to think clearly. Carol, I'm fine. I'm happy here. Please tell Darren to stop pushing this. I'll talk to him, but you should consider compromising. Maybe let him rent it out just during the summer months. You could stay with me in Dallas when there are guests. Goodbye, Carol. I hung up before she could continue. That evening, I sat on my laptop researching property law in Texas, rights of property owners, what constituted harassment. I took notes in my engineer-trained handwriting, organized and cross-referenced. But here's where things get interesting. You're not going to believe what happened next. 2 weeks later, I was in town buying supplies when I saw a poster in the window of a coffee shop. Stunning Lakefront Cottage, perfect getaway. The photo showed my deck, my view, my oak trees. I stared at it for a full minute before it sank in. That was my cottage, my property, being advertised like some vacation rental. I went inside and asked the barista about it. Oh, someone's been putting those up around town. Young guy, real friendly. Paid me $25 to post it for a month. The poster had a website URL printed at the bottom. I pulled out my phone right there in the coffee shop and navigated to it. What I saw made my blood pressure spike. The site was professionally designed. Lake Texoma Retreat. Book your dream vacation. Multiple photos of my cottage taken from different angles. Interior shots through the windows. A booking calendar with little green dots showing availability. Rates, $250 per night. 2-night minimum. My cottage. Listed for rent without my knowledge or permission. The contact information showed an email address, laketexomarentals@gmail.com. No phone number, which told me whoever did this knew they were doing something wrong. I scrolled through the booking calendar. 3 reservations were already marked in red. 1 in 2 weeks, 2 more in December. I drove home carefully, forcing myself not to speed despite the rage building in my chest. At the cottage, I walked around checking every window and door. No signs of forced entry, but Darren had been inside during that surprise visit. He could have taken photos then, or maybe he'd been sneaking around taking pictures through the windows during other visits I didn't know about. You know what really got to me? The description on the website called it a charming family retreat with rustic Texas charm. Family retreat, the place I'd bought to get away from family drama. I called Diana, my real estate agent, from my kitchen table. I need a lawyer recommendation. Property law specialist. Is everything all right, Howard? Someone's trying to rent my cottage without my permission. That's illegal. Let me give you Wesley Palmer's number. He handles property disputes. He's tough as nails when he needs to be. Palmer's office was in Sherman, about 45 minutes away. I drove over the next morning with my laptop and printed screenshots of everything. The website, the booking calendar, the poster, all of it organized in a folder like I was presenting engineering specs for a highway project. Palmer was a thin man in his 50s with gray hair and the kind of steady eyes that told you he'd seen every trick in the book. He reviewed everything carefully, asking questions and taking notes. This is fraud, Mr. Barnes. Clear-cut case. Your nephew is collecting money for rental of property he doesn't own or have authority to rent. We can pursue both civil and criminal charges. I want to understand all my options before deciding. What would criminal charges involve? Fraud investigation by the sheriff's department. If they find sufficient evidence, which they clearly would, your nephew could face criminal charges. Fraud over $2,500 is a state jail felony in Texas. And civil? We sue for damages, get an injunction ordering him to cease operations immediately, potentially pursue recovery of any money he's collected from fraudulent bookings. Less dramatic than criminal charges, but still effective. How quickly can we act? I can have a cease and desist letter drafted by tomorrow. The injunction filing would take a few days. Do it, all of it, and I want security cameras installed at my property. Now here's where my engineering background came in handy. I spent $600 on a security system that afternoon. 2 cameras covering the driveway and deck, 1 covering the back of the cottage. Motion activated with wireless connection recording to cloud storage. The installer, a young tech guy who knew his stuff, had them operational by evening. This system will catch a mosquito landing on your deck, he said. Night vision, everything uploaded automatically. You'll get alerts on your phone. Palmer's cease and desist letter went out the next day via certified mail to Darren's address in Plano. It was 3 pages of legal language that basically said, stop this fraud immediately, refund all money, and don't contact Mr. Barnes except through attorneys. Darren called at 8 that evening. I let it ring 3 times before answering. You had your lawyer send me legal threats over a misunderstanding? Misunderstanding? You listed my property for rent without permission. You're collecting money for something you have no right to offer. I was moving forward with the business plan we discussed. I thought you'd come around once you saw I was serious about this. The sheer audacity of it. We didn't discuss anything. I refused your proposal multiple times. This is ridiculous, Uncle Howard. I'm family. We should be working together, not fighting through lawyers. Take down the website. Refund anyone who paid you. If you don't, I'm filing criminal fraud charges with the sheriff's department. You wouldn't do that to your own nephew. Try me. He hung up. I immediately checked the rental website on my phone. Still active. All the photos still there. Booking calendar still taking reservations. I called Palmer right away. He's refusing to comply. Move forward with everything. Understood. I'll file for the injunction first thing tomorrow and contact the sheriff's fraud division. That night, I sat on my deck with a cup of coffee, watching the stars reflect on the water. The heron was out there somewhere, probably sleeping in the reeds. Everything was peaceful. But I knew this was just the calm before the storm. My phone buzzed with a motion alert from the security cameras. I opened the app and watched Darren's car pull into my driveway at 10:15 p.m. He got out and walked around the cottage, trying doors and windows, all locked. He stood on my deck for several minutes, hands in his pockets, staring at the dark windows like he was planning something. Then he left. I saved the footage and sent a copy to Palmer. We had him now, breaking and entering, or at least attempted trespassing, on top of the fraud. But you know what? Darren wasn't done yet. The next day brought the real confrontation. The sheriff's deputy came to my cottage 3 days later. Deputy Diana Hoffman, professional and thorough, probably mid-40s with the kind of no-nonsense attitude you want in law enforcement. I walked her through everything from the beginning. The initial proposal, my refusals, the website, the bookings, the cease and desist letter that was ignored. Do you know if he's actually collected any money from these bookings? I can't prove it, but there are confirmed reservations on his website. The first one's supposed to arrive tomorrow. Has he attempted to enter the property without permission? I pulled out my phone and showed her the security footage of Darren's late-night visit. Mr. Barnes, I'll be frank with you. This is fraud. Your nephew is operating a rental business using property he doesn't own. That's a criminal offense. But I need to ask, is this something you want to pursue criminally? These cases can be complicated when family's involved. I want him stopped. Whatever it takes. She made notes in her notebook, same way I used to document engineering problems. I'll open an investigation. If he shows up with paying guests tomorrow, call me immediately. Don't confront him yourself. Understood. The next evening at 7 o'clock, headlights came up my driveway. I was ready for them. I recognized Darren's car, followed by a second vehicle. Looked like a couple, probably in their 30s, with luggage in their back seat. I called Deputy Hoffman. They're here. Don't answer the door. I'm 15 minutes away. I watched through the window as Darren and the couple approached my deck. This was it. The moment I'd been preparing for. Darren tried the door, found it locked, then knocked. Uncle Howard, it's Darren. I have guests checking in. I stayed silent, phone in hand, recording everything. The knocking grew louder. Uncle Howard, open up. These people paid good money for this reservation. The couple looked confused, uncomfortable. The woman said something to Darren I couldn't quite hear through the window. He responded, gesturing at the cottage, clearly making excuses. I could see his face getting red even in the dim light. Let me tell you something. Watching someone try to explain why they can't deliver on a scam they've been running, that's what we call justice in slow motion. 10 minutes later, Deputy Hoffman's cruiser pulled in with its headlights cutting through the darkness. I opened the door as she approached. Mr. Barnes, stay inside, please. I watched from the window as she spoke with Darren and the couple. The couple's expressions went from confused to shocked to angry in about 30 seconds. The woman started pointing at Darren and raising her voice. The man was shaking his head, pulling out his phone. They got in their car and left quickly, tires crunching on the gravel. Darren stood there arguing with Deputy Hoffman for several minutes. She handed him some documents. He read them, his face getting redder, even in the dim driveway lights. Finally, his shoulders sagged. He got in his car and drove off without looking back at the cottage. Deputy Hoffman came to my door after his taillights disappeared. I've informed him that he's under criminal investigation for fraud. He's been ordered to cease all rental operations, refund all payments, and have no contact with you except through lawyers. He violated the civil cease and desist, which strengthens your case considerably. And those guests? They paid him $750 for a 3-day weekend stay. They're furious. They drove 4 hours to get here. Will there be charges? That's up to the district attorney, but I've documented everything tonight. The evidence is strong. Your nephew's in serious trouble. After she left, I sat at my kitchen table in the quiet cottage. The fireplace crackled. Outside, the lake was dark and peaceful. I'd protected my home, but the cost was becoming clear. My nephew was facing criminal investigation. Carol would never forgive me. The family I had left was fracturing. I poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon, something I rarely did, and went to the deck. The November air was cold, but I needed it. I thought about Linda, about what she'd say if she were here. She'd been practical, fair. She'd probably tell me I was right to protect my property, but she'd grieve the family damage too. My phone rang. Carol. I almost didn't answer. You called the police on Darren. You're having your own nephew investigated for fraud? Carol, he was running a rental scam using my property. He took money from people for bookings I never authorized. What did you expect me to do? Work it out as family, not destroy his life with criminal charges. He destroyed the situation himself. I refused his proposal multiple times. He ignored me, ignored my lawyer, and showed up with paying customers anyway. He's my son, Howard, my only child. You're willing to send him to jail over this? I'm willing to protect what I worked 40 years to earn. If he goes to jail, it's because of choices he made. You've become someone I don't recognize. Linda would be ashamed of you. That one hit hard, exactly as she'd intended. Don't use my dead wife against me. I'm done. Don't call me. Don't contact Darren. We're not your family anymore. She hung up. I sat on the cold deck for a long time after that. The bourbon tasted like nothing. Complete silence except for the gentle lapping of water against the shore. I was completely alone now in the solitude I'd sought, and it felt heavier than I'd expected. But here's the thing. Sometimes protecting what matters means accepting the cost. The legal proceedings moved forward. Palmer kept me updated. The injunction was granted. Darren was ordered to pay damages of $8,500 for the fraudulent bookings he'd collected. The district attorney decided to proceed with fraud charges. Darren took a plea deal, deferred adjudication, 18 months probation, $15,000 in restitution and fines. He and Jennifer separated over the stress. In January, Carol came to visit. We talked. She was still angry, but she could see that Darren had been wrong. She could see that I'd tried to handle it reasonably before involving lawyers and law enforcement. "It is beautiful here," she admitted, looking around the cottage properly for the first time. "We're working on rebuilding our relationship. It'll take time. These days, I have my routine back. Morning coffee on the deck. The heron visits most mornings. I've finished that birdhouse I was making. Hung it in the oak tree where Linda would have loved to see it. The cottage is quiet. Mine. Earned through 40 years of work and defended through months of legal battles. The price was high, but sitting here in the peace I fought for, I couldn't regret the choice. Some fights are worth having. Some boundaries are worth defending." The heron caught a fish this morning, swallowed it in one smooth motion, and went back to hunting. I picked up my coffee and did the same.